Hello YouTube, Helsinki Rocks AGF here today with another collection video. I was talking to one of my friends who just recently uploaded a collection video. There'll be a link to her channel down below. We're talking about how she did her Nintendo 64 collection, and I was talking about how mine is kind of a joke. Like, to be completely honest, I grew up during the heyday of the Nintendo 64, but it's never a system that's meshed well with me. Apart from a few key games like Smash Bros. And honestly, I just don't think many of the games have aged all that well. Mario 64 is fun still, but games like Mario Kart 64 and the old Mario parties, they just don't compare to the later entries in the franchises, and I wish my camera would stop autofocusing. It's kind of really annoying. But I'm going to go ahead and start off here. The first game, 007, The World Is Not Enough, and honestly, I don't know a thing about this game. I haven't played it at all. I believe it's the follow-up to GoldenEye, but I haven't played it to know for sure if it's any good or not. Diddy Kong Racing. Now, I did mention Mario Kart 64 here, and actually showing Diddy Kong Racing gives me an idea about something I need to say. My Nintendo 64 collection is severely lacking in what a lot of people would call the essential titles. Games like Mario Kart 64, Super Mario 64, Smash Brothers, which I used to have. I let someone borrow it and then it got lost or stolen or whatever, but I don't have that anymore. So my collection is missing a lot of those essential games. Star Fox 64. It's a collection that I definitely need to work on, but I just haven't had the time to do that yet. But Diddy Kong Racing is definitely the best kart racer on the N64, and honestly, it puts Mario Kart 64 to shame. This game is actually still fun to play, whereas Mario Kart 64 is kind of boring and almost feels like a chore to play these days. Diddy Kong Racing is very fun. One of my favorite racing games on the Nintendo 64, I have the first two here. That is Extreme G and Extreme G2. They're futuristic bike racing games, and you get weapons and power-ups, and you race at insane speeds through crazy tracks to techno music, and they're really fun. They're really addicting games. 3 and the fourth one, I believe, were on the next generation systems, the GameCube, Xbox, PS2. They're really fun. They're not quite as good as the first two on the Nintendo 64, but definitely give them a chance if you like racing kind of arcadey racer games. And I really screwed that sentence up. GoldenEye 007. Quintessential first-person shooter for console games, especially in the early days. I didn't play this in its heyday. I actually played it more recently than a lot of people with my friends who actually loved the game back when it first came out. And I still have a blast with this game. I can go from playing Call of Duty or the GoldenEye remake or any modern first-person shooter to playing this with only minor adjustments to the controls. It's still a really fun game in multiplayer. I wouldn't play it in single player these days, but in multiplayer it's still a blast. Hey You Pikachu. Pikachu simulation game. You talk to Pikachu, you make Pikachu do things, and my favorite thing was as a kid discovering you could make Pikachu shock stuff by saying Thunder Shock, Thunderbolt, and Thunder. Pikachu will shock things or make faces, and I never made it all the way through the game, but it's not bad, but you get kind of tired of it pretty quickly. MRC, Multi-Racing Championship. This was a game I rented a lot as a kid, and I never could remember the name of it as an adult to buy it. And I just happened to find this game, and I thought, this looks like it might be that game, and sure enough it is. It's a basic arcade racer, but I always had a blast playing it as a kid, so I kind of had to have it in my collection. Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2. I never cared for the main stories of these games. There's not really a story, but the Gym Leader Castle, the main challenge mode, if you would say. I always had much more fun playing the mini games, doing the quizzes. Dig 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 in particular from the first game is probably my favorite mini game out of the two games. After skipping a bunch of letters, we end at Wave Race 64. I love the Wave Race games. The one on the GameCube is probably the most fun gameplay-wise. Definitely the best looking, but all those Wave Race games are very impressive visually for their consoles, and it'd be nice to see one on the Wii U to show off what the Wii U really can do. I think Wave Race would be a great example for that. And then next we have a giant stack of wrestling games, because anyone who grew up in the 90s and liked wrestling knew that the N64 was the console to have for wrestling games. We have WCW NWA World Tour, which was one of the first games to use the THQ wrestling engine, which is definitely the best one. It's like a mid-90s WCW game, so you have a couple people from the NWO, a couple people from WCW, but none of the real big breakout guys like the Wolfpack or its sequel built on it a lot more, which was WCW NWO Revenge, which is definitely the better game, arguably the best wrestling game on the N64. I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to have a little discussion about these wrestling games inside this video, because we have the two main WCW games, and here we have the two main WWF games, WWF WrestleMania 2000 and WWF No Mercy. Out of these two, a lot of people would say that No Mercy is the better game, but honestly, I really like WrestleMania 2000 so much more. No Mercy has more stuff to it, but it's not as fun and it's not as polished or technically good of a game. It's made on the same engine as this, but No Mercy frequently slows down. It has a ton of bugs and glitches, whereas WrestleMania 2000 is a little lighter on the content side. The gameplay is much better, though. All around, just I think it's a better game. But out of the 4 N64 wrestling games, the 2 WWF games and the 2 WCW games, I would say go for Revenge and WrestleMania 2000 to get your 90s wrestling experience, because you have all the main WCW guys in this game and all the main WWF guys in this game. It's definitely the best bet if you want to relive the 90s and put on some awesome matches. And then to end off my Nintendo 64 collection, like I said, it's missing so many important games. Oh, I actually missed one. WWF Warzone is a bad game, don't play it. So I'll just leave it at that. The last game in my collection is Yoshi's Story, which I found for $1 at a thrift store. It's not for me. I don't really like it. That's my Nintendo 64 collection. Short, missing a lot of important games like Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart, which I don't really care to not have because I don't really like Mario Kart. But all in all, I'm not a big fan of the N64 despite growing up with it. Definitely the Super Nintendo and the GameCube were much better. I like the N64 more than the PlayStation 1, but I like the Saturn better than both. Until then, guys, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.